So Game of Thrones season 7 was going to be a really hard sell from the beginning. Season 5 is generally regarded as the worst season. It was awful because of Dorne, because of the Daenerys plot, because of Sansa's rape. Just tons of awful stuff happened in season 5. And then season 6 was a snooze fest that, honestly, when I was watching it, I just skipped through a lot. Like, I just skipped a lot of the scenes. Because I admit, when I read the books, I skipped the Dorne plot, most of the Daenerys plot, um, the Iron Isles plot, and the Arya plot, because they were just so tedious, boring, slow. They didn't really have anything to do with the core story that was going on. So I really skipped through season 6 because it was a snooze fest. It was just kind of building up tension. I watched a couple like important things, like Battle of the Bastards and Winds of Winter, and just kind of some of the other stuff. But like I watched it, I was in VLC player obviously, so I was just skipping through until something important happened. So why was season 7 going to be a tough sell? Well, you had two pretty subpar seasons to begin with. I mean, season 6 wasn't as bad as season 5, but it didn't really inspire that much confidence, aside from a couple good battle scenes. Um, but it's, yeah, like, the show basically ended when they blew up the Great Sept of Baelor. Because, I mean, more or less what happened when they blew it up was they killed most of the remaining characters and most of the remaining players in the Game of Thrones. They killed Tommen, committed suicide. Marjorie's dead. Mace Tyrell's dead. Loras is dead. The Tyrell line went extinct. The High Septim died. Kevin Lannister died. Basically, most of the remaining players of the Game of Thrones are dead at this point. And we basically now only have two real factions left who are fighting over the Iron Throne. Also, they killed off Stannis, so they basically, and they killed off the Dorne plot and Arya plot. So basically, they killed most of the plots of the show off. Some of them were really shitty and needed to be killed off. Like Arya needed to leave the House of Black and White because that was just dragging forever. The Dorne plot was abysmal, so that needed to be ended. But they ended like most of the subplots in like at the span of a couple episodes, and a couple of the main plots. So kind of one of the things that was engaging about Game of Thrones was the multi-front wars. You had the Ironborn were doing their own thing. You had the North. You have Cersei. You have the Tyrells. You have the Dornish. You have Dany. You have all these different people who have their own schemes and their own agendas, and you don't really know what's going to happen. And that's kind of one of the things that makes Game of Thrones such a great series is you never know what's going to happen. But by killing off most of the main actors, it kind of just put the show down to we know exactly what's going to happen. And the ending of season 6 was retarded. How the fuck did Cersei declare herself queen? It doesn't make any sense. She has no claim whatsoever to the throne. She's not related to the Targaryens. She's not related to the Baratheons. I guess the closest thing she has to a claim is that she has a Lannister army. So she's basically just kind of a military dictator at this point. I mean, with the extinction of the Baratheon line, the fact that there is no one who's even a vague heir. The closest thing you have to an heir is, I guess, Gendry, but he's a bastard, and people don't even know he exists. So there's really no one who can inherit the throne. So traditionally, what kingdoms what would happen historically is they'd call a great council, and the lords would elect one of their own to be the new king. But obviously, that can't happen. So Cersei just declares herself queen, despite being universally despised, completely inept, and having no claim whatsoever to the throne. So the thought that she's going to rule the Seven Kingdoms is retarded. She's destroyed their alliance with the Tyrells. Littlefingered them. Dorne is seceded. The North has seceded. So really, all Cersei is left with by this point is the Crown lands I guess the Riverland. I think Littlefinger's Lord Paramount of the Riverlands. It's kind of confusing. Okay, the Riverland. No, because Littlefingered them. Okay, so the Crown Lands and the Rock, and they aren't geographically joined to one another. So she commands two of the constituent parts, both of which are heavily depleted. The Lannister army has borne the brunt of the fighting throughout the war. I mean, keep in mind the two armies that took the most casualty. Well, I guess the three that took the most casualties are the Riverlands, the Starks, and the Lannisters. The Stormlands took quite a pounding as well, but I don't think it was quite as bad as the others. So the North lost most of its military age population. The Westerlands lost a huge number of people, and they're increasingly having to rely on mercenaries. As time goes on, the Tyrells and Dornish haven't lost any troops yet. The Tyrells still have an army that's almost as big as the rest of the kingdoms put together. And at this point, with everyone else being pretty basically depleted. I think in the books it said Lord Hightower can raise more levies than Dorne in the North put together. So Cersei basically alienated the last group with a large intact army and made them her mortal enemies. Although House Tyrell is extinct, so I don't know. None of it really makes much sense. How she declares herself queen, how she expects to be able to hold the Iron Throne, none of it makes any sense. I guess she's just crazy. So we enter into season 6 with the Lannisters basically strategically in an impossible, horrible position, surrounded on all sides by enemies, without any remaining allies. Basically, they're down to their own resources, which are depleted as they're out of gold and they're almost out of manpower. Then we have Daenerys crossing the Narrow Sea with her dragons, her army of Dothraki, her Unsullied, and and her Dornish troops. So it kind of seems at the start of the season that Daenerys is going to win by default because Cersei has no claim to the throne. The last people who could have unified Westeros, Kevan, the High Septim, could have declared a holy war. Tommen could have led the kingdom against them. All that kind of stuff. The last people who could maintain something resembling order have by this point in time were all killed off. But I guess kind of the twist though is that Cersei doesn't win by default. She immediately, as the season starts, makes a pact with Euron Greyjoy, which is something I did not see coming. Now, Euron in this show is nothing like Euron in the books, which I'm fine with because the Iron Isle plot was shit to begin with. But Euron Greyjoy basically says that if Cersei will marry him once the war's over, he'll serve her, and he promises to bring her a present. So he succeeds in attacking and destroying the fleet that Yara had taken to join Daenerys and sinks it. So he kills basically all of the Ironborn. So he succeeds in killing most of the Ironborn. He also succeeds in killing most of the remaining Dornish soldiers. So basically, they just do extremely. They destroyed a large portion of Dany's army and a lot of her transports. They then follow it up by trapping the Unsullied. The Unsullied go to invade Casterly Rock, and when they go to invade it, they find that it's been abandoned, all of its stores taken, and they burn the Unsullied fleet in the port. Well, the problem with that is Lannisport is right there, and why they wouldn't defend the Rock and burn the ships, I don't know. Because they could have left like a decent-sized garrison. Casterly Rock is basically untakeable. I know there's that stupid sewer thing, but whatever. But yeah, they could have just left a garrison there and then burned the ships anyways after they got off of them. But I guess abandoning one of the most important fortresses in Westeros makes good strategic sense. So then they invade the Reach, and we're down to like another thing that makes no sense. I mean, nothing about this show makes any sense anymore, and we'll get into that in a minute. So Jamie and Braun somehow manage to take Highgarden. Now, how they're able to go through the largest military power in Westeros doesn't make a lot of sense. Somehow, Olenna Tyrell has succeeded in taking control of the Olenna Florent, or is it Hightower? Whatever her name is, has taken control of the of Highgarden and declared herself Lady Paramount of the Reach. But she has no claim. She's not a Tyrell by blood. She's not a Tyrell um, cadet branch. She's Mary. She was the dowager of the dynasty, but it's an irrelevant position. She has no authority, and yet for whatever reason she's able to become the Lady Paramount of the Riverlands. Like, why do these people keep accepting these random women who have no claim to the throne? The same issue we have is in Dorne. Why do the people accept the Sand Snakes? Durin Martell was, from my understanding, widely loved, as was Tristan. So we're supposed to accept that the people of Dorne are okay with a bunch of random people killing their prince, killing his heir, killing a child, a little girl, and taking over the country in a coup. We're supposed to accept that the people of Dorne, as shitty as they are okay with this. We're supposed to accept that the Bannermen of the Reach are okay with Olenna, and that everybody else is okay with Cersei. Now, Cersei makes one of her few. It's kind of interesting because as much as this doesn't make sense, the war effort of the Lannisters actually does kind of make sense. So, however, they're able to deke out the Tyrells and they succeed in taking Highgarden. My guess is that Olenna is only controls Highgarden and they're just loyal to her because they don't know who's in charge and she's just kind of authority. I know she was at Highgarden when the whole thing happened, so she is able to, I guess, kind of maintain control. I think most of the Reach Lords, though, are kind of neutral. So they wind up going to Randall Tarley, and they offer him the Lord Paramountcy of the Riverlands on the condition that, of the Reach, on the condition that he sides with the Lannisters. Now, he doesn't like Cersei. Cersei has no claim to the throne, but Jaime points out, look, everybody you held an oath to is dead. You're a High Lord. He's a High Lord. Why you might as well be the new Lord Paramount of the Riverlands. I think because at this point no one has a claim to it, so picking one of the great houses of I keep saying Riverlands of the Reach to be the next Lord Paramount makes sense, and Cersei is the closest thing the realm has to a central government. So Tarly accepts, and I think he's as close to a legitimate Lord Paramount as you want. So I think a lot of the former Tyrell bannermen follow him because he's well respected and he's very prestigious. The Tarleys are one of the major houses of the Reach, and he's known as a statesman and a general and well known as a military commander, having won the Battle of Ashford. Now, the other thing that I kind of like about the season is Euron Greyjoy, despite being nothing like Euron Greyjoy in the books, is the new Lord Commander of the Thought Patrol. The gift he gives Cersei is Yara and Alira Sand are making out, and he just shows up, and in like the most fucking awesome scene in the season, he just comes in with an axe like an animal, and he kills the fucking sand snakes, and then he beats the shit out of Yara and Alara, and he takes them back to Cersei so Cersei can slowly kill them. So he gets rid of like most of the most annoying characters in the show, and he kills a lot of thoughts. He takes a lot of thoughts down, so he's the new Lord Commander of the Thought Patrol. He's kind of the new Stannis Baratheon. He just kind of came out of nowhere. A lot of people like him because he's like the last alpha as fuck male left. Like we had Robert, who was alpha, even though he's kind of a douche. We had Stannis, who was super alpha. We had the Mountain. He's dead now. Jaime's a pussy now. We had Tywin, who's like the most alpha man who ever lived. So they've killed off a lot of the strong male characters, and now we just have all these bitchy women who are running the show. So that all happens. So it's looking like the Lannisters are going to win the war. They've succeeded in basically destroying the remainder, all of Daenerys' fleet. The Unsullied are going to die because they're trapped in the middle of nowhere, and they lost the entire Dornish army, burned at sea. So, plus Euron Greyjoy is supporting them now. So things actually look like they're going pretty well. Randall Tarley's probably going to bring the Reach in. Daenerys has lost the majority of her military might. So then we get to the bullshit. The Lannister army is returning across the continent, and somehow out of nowhere an army of Dothraki comes. The Dothraki just show up somehow. I guess they teleported. And the Dothraki charge the Lannisters. Now, the Lannisters are smart. They've got shields and spears, and they form a shield wall. Now, historically, what happens when light cavalry charges heavy infantry in a shield wall with spears is the light cavalry gets slaughtered. Nothing on heaven and earth can stand up to heavy cavalry. Even like pike formations and like people with spears and shields get crushed by knights. They can just hit them in the front even. I mean, that's not the smartest thing to do, but the Dothraki aren't even horse archers. They wear no armor. They have their, whatever they're called, they're like sickle swords. What the hell is a sickle sword supposed to do against armor? The Lannister soldiers wear good quality munition armor. Munition armor being mass-produced plate. And they have shields. There's like literally, aside from the neck, nowhere on them that they can even hurt the Lannister. Whereas the Lannister soldiers can just beat the living crap out of them. So the Dothraki are basically fucked. There's nothing they can do. They don't even have bows, really. They just have they're useless light cavalry. And the Lannisters also have longbowmen. And longbowmen slaughter light cavalry. They're very good at killing cavalry in general, but they're especially good at killing light cavalry because they're a big target. A horse is a bigger target than a human. If you were trying to shoot an arrow at a Lannister bannerman, most of their body has plate over it. Now, you can pierce plate, and munition armor is not the best, but generally speaking, not a lot can get through plate, except at crossbows at very short range. So, yeah, but what happens is Daenerys shows up on her dragon and succeeds in burning all the people to the, burning all the Lannisters. So the Dothraki win by default because they have the fucking cheat code. And we get Bronn shooting down the dragon with a scorpion. And it actually works. It hits the dragon, it damages its wing, although it's magically repaired in the next scene. And Daenerys succeeds in taking a bunch of the prisoners. So among them are Randall Tarley and his son Dickon. So they're brought before Daenerys, and she's like, bend the knee or die. And Randall Tarley's like, I swore an oath to serve Queen Cersei. I always keep my oaths. I stopped serving the Tyrells because the Tyrells were extinct, so my oath didn't matter anymore. I'm the new Lord Paramount of the Reach. I have a responsibility to it. You've brought an army of these savage people who rape and murder, and that's been confirmed in the show numerous times. Although the Dothraki are savages that just rape and pillage everything, and you're going to let them loose on Westeros. I'm not going to bend the knee and help you to annihilate this. He gives like this big speech that I think is supposed to make him unsympathetic, but to me it does. He's like, look, you're some random woman from the other side of the world who brings an army of savages to invade Westeros. You don't share our gods, you don't share our culture, you don't share anything with us. And you're just going to come in here and destroy everything and try to rebuild it in your image. And basically your entire claim to the throne is just might makes right. Like, yeah, you can talk about how idealistic, etc. But what it comes down to is she has dragons and they don't. And because she has dragons, she's just going to slaughter them until she gets her way. All the while wrapping herself in this pretentious cloak of moral rectitude. I mean, if she wants to conquer the Seven Kingdoms, fine. But don't pretend it's for any reason other than just her ego. Which is really what this whole thing has been about. Fulfilling that and fulfilling the dream of her brother who he she hated anyways, but she wants to fulfill her dream because it's hers by right. So all that stuff happened, and none of it really made any sense. So the Lannisters immediately like give up, and Cersei's like, "There's nothing we can do. The dragons are invincible." Even though we hit one with two ballista bolts, scorpion bolts, and it actually worked. So we just have to build some more ballistas, and we could probably shoot the rest of the dragons down. The Dothraki have no siege weapons. Also, it's a logistical nightmare. They don't have enough food for their horses. We could just sit in our castles. If we have enough scorpions, the dragons can't really do shit, and just wait them out until their horses they run out of food because they don't really have any logistics. But Cersei's like, no, we're completely screwed. We're gonna die. Let's give up on fighting. And they don't really have a solution to do other than fighting, but they just kind of give up. So that stuff happened. And it didn't really make a lot of sense, to be perfectly honest. But it is what it is, I guess. So then, north of the wall, we have equal stupidity. So Jon Snow's just like, okay, guys, I know I just became king in the north, but I have to go get dragon glass and dragons. GTFO, guys. So Jon Snow just leaves to go to Dragonstone. We have to endure a bunch of scenes of him awkwardly flirting with Dany. And it's just so much awkward waiting around in this season and nothing happening. And we have to endure scenes of Sam changing bedpans and like cleaning up shit. And then we have to endure him scraping the grayscale off of Jorah Mormont. And it's just awful. So then Daenerys and Jon have like their awkward romantic tension. And before that though, Sansa and her, I got completely distracted. Sorry. So Randall, Tarly, and Dickon refuse to bend the knee. So Randall's initially tries to defend his son, but his son says, "No, I swore an oath. I'm a man like my father. I'm not gonna betray my honor." So Daenerys has them both burned alive, and the Tarly house is now extinct. She wipes out the house because they either bend the knee or she'll destroy them. And she's like, "I'm not here to put men in chains. If I took prisoners, then lots of people would surrender and become my prisoners." And it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. So you don't want people to surrender, and why did you kill your highest value prisoners? Generally speaking, in war, high value prisoners are good because you can trade them. So if, like, I don't know, one of Daenerys' generals gets captured, she could have traded Randall Tarly for them and gotten them back. Killing them serves no purpose whatsoever, other than to just make people want to fight to the death. Because she's going to kill them anyways, unless they surrender and fight against their kin for her. So they're in the north, and you have, in the same vein of kind of this retardation, Jon Snow and Sansa are trying to figure out what to do with the Umbers and the Karstarks because they fought with the Boltons. And they're like, Sansa's like, we should take their land away. And I'm like, well, Ramsay and Bruce Bolton were the legitimate Lord Paramounts of the North. The Stark line was extinct, and it was within the rights of the realm that I believe Joffrey was still king, as far as we know, the legitimate king of the Seven Kingdoms, to name a new Warden of the North. The Boltons are a High Lord family. They were probably the most prestigious, along with the Manderleys, after the Starks. So it was within their right to name the Warden of the North and to kind of raise them to the Lord Paramountcy. So the Karstarks and Umbers were following the legitimate head of the North. Now, am I saying that the Boltons didn't need to go? They definitely did, but I don't really see how you can blame the houses that fought on the side of the legitimate Lord Paramount of the North instead of with the bastard of Ned Stark, who doesn't really have any legal claim. So they want to strip. Sansa wants to strip them away, and Jon's like, "No, we can't do that. You can't just end these houses that have been around for thousands of years because like one member of them took the wrong side in a war." So like that happens, and then Jon goes to Dragonstone and does nothing for like the rest of the season. So like it's all really stupid. None of it really makes any sense. And then like the dumbest thing happens where Sam's reading, Gilly's reading a book, and she's like, "Oh, someone named Rhaegar got a divorce, got an annulment, and then he married someone named Lyanna." And Sam is like, "No, we don't have time for that. I don't know who Rhaegar is." So apparently, somehow Rhaegar got an annulment from what's her name? God, what's her name? Let me see, Rhaegar's wife. Uh, was it Aaliyah? I'm trying to remember what her name is. Aaliyah. This is good. This is great content, by the way. Aaliyah, yeah, Aaliyah Martell. So yeah, so he had his wife, Amia Martell, and somehow he got divorced. He got annulled for her, even though they consensually married. Their marriage was consummated. It was probably performed by the High Septum, and it was generally recognized as being legitimate. And on top of all of that, they had children together, which were considered legitimate. So if the marriage was annulled, that would mean that Rhaegar's children were bastards, right? I don't know how inheritance laws work, but somehow someone granted him a bullshit annulment, and he's such a piece of shit to his wife. I mean, Rhaegar's a horrible human being. He's just so douchey. His wife seems like a really nice woman, by all accounts. And Rhaegar just treated her like shit. Let's see here. Yeah, it's just bullshit. I don't know. So that doesn't make sense. All these people ruling kingdoms with no claim doesn't make any sense. And like we end the most recent episode with this crack team of like rejects going off to capture a zombie so they can take the zombie to show Cersei and Daenerys to get them to put aside their fighting to deal something with the army of the dead. Because the army of the dead has been rambling towards the wall for the last 7 seasons, and they might actually get there at some point, maybe. Because I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my something or other, so tell me maybe. I don't know. None of it really makes any sense to me. The whole thing is, yeah. So yeah, nothing about this season makes any sense. People act completely irrationally. The political events don't make any sense. The military events don't make any sense. Overall, like it's not as bad as like season 6 or 5, but it's contrived. It's just kind of lame, to be perfectly honest. I just don't feel invested anymore. I don't give a shit about the remaining characters. So that's kind of my analysis of the season. Yeah, and hail Bail, you're on Lord Commander of the Thought Patrol.